Hi everyone, my name is Leanne and today I'm going to be telling you about 5 books that are set in Northern Ireland. So one of our prompts for the Irish Readathon this year was to read a book that was set in Northern Ireland. We really wanted to recognise Northern Ireland as its own sort of unique cultural experience. Aoife, my co-host, and I are both from Dublin. In fact, we are from really near each other in Dublin. Like, we grew up basically like down the road from each other but didn't know each other until like booktube. But we are from the same place, and speaking for myself, I know that my experiences growing up in Dublin is so different from people's experiences growing up in different parts of Ireland, and Northern Ireland in particular. I think often when we talk about Northern Ireland, we look at people either identifying as Irish or identifying as British, and I'm not going to get into that now, but I do think it's important to acknowledge Northern Irishness as its own unique cultural experience, and that's kind of what we wanted to do with this prompt. A lot of books that are set in or about Northern Ireland are significantly about the Troubles, and if you don't know what the Troubles are, I would encourage you to do your own research on that, do some googling. I'm sure you'll find even more books than the 5 I'm going to mention here, but all of these books do deal with the Troubles to varying degrees, and I think fiction as well as non-fiction is a great way of learning about these kinds of difficult big topics. But without further ado, I am going to get into my recommendations, starting with Milkman by Anna Burns, which was the winner of the Booker Prize a few years ago. Now, by that accolade, you can guess that this is a pretty literary novel, but I think this book gets an unfair reputation for being really difficult. It is written in a stream of consciousness style, but I think it's actually really accessible. However, if you do come to this book and find you are struggling with that, I would highly recommend the audio version as well. When I was reading this a few years ago, I swapped between the physical book and the audio, and I found that a really great reading experience. This book is set in an unnamed city, but we can definitely recognise it as Northern Ireland, and in particular Belfast. The characters don't have names, they are kind of described or referred to by their role in the protagonist's life, and that way of telling the story gives this book a very kind of dystopian Orwellian feel to it, but it is set in Northern Ireland in the not so distant past. At the centre of this book, we have a teenage protagonist who receives a lot of unwelcome attention from a paramilitary who is far older than her. And it's about how her association with this person, even though it's not by her choice, comes to affect her life. And this relationship between this teenager and this paramilitary acts as an extended metaphor for the society around them. It's a book that is a powerful political statement, but it's a book that's also about obsession, and a book that I think is very interesting from a psychological perspective. I also want to talk about Big Girl Small Town by Michelle Galler. This is a book about Majella, who has a very sort of routine life. She goes to work every day at the local chipper or chippy. She always wears the same sort of clothes. She comes home, watches the same TV shows, but she has quite a complicated home life. Her mother is an alcoholic, her father has disappeared, and we know that that is in some way related to the Troubles. But this novel is really focused on just living through Majella's life. That stuff is ever present in her story, but we are really focused on her and her interactions. She is someone that a lot of people find quite odd, and we are so in her head with this novel. Majella is autistic, and we can see the ways that she thinks differently to those around her, how things can be lost in translation sometimes, but we also see how Majella is often taken advantage of because of this. I think it's interesting to compare a novel like Milkman to a novel like this one. You know, Milkman is talking about a broad, big societal issue by using a very personal story as a metaphor, whereas Big Girl Small Town is very much a personal story with the Troubles in the background. It reminds us that at the heart of this historical event there were actual people living actual lives. And a non-fiction book that also reminds us of this is The Troubles with Us by Alex O'Neill. Now, this is the only non-fiction book that I'm going to be talking about in this video, and it is one that I thought was absolutely fantastic. A lot of books from Northern Ireland are being compared to Derry Girls quite a lot nowadays, and I do absolutely love Derry Girls. It is one of my favourite TV shows, so I would definitely recommend you watch it, but I do think it's becoming one of those slightly lazy comparisons. However, The Troubles with Us is something that I think if you enjoyed Derry Girls, you would get a lot of value out of this one as well, because it is about that kind of, the same thing that Derry Girls has, where it is just about these kids trying to live their lives, trying to get through their adolescence, and the Troubles are in the background, and you see these adolescent characters almost dismissing how dangerous and challenging their lives are, how different their lives are for people who don't grow up in that kind of conflict. And in The Troubles with Us, which is a memoir, Alex is sharing her experiences of growing up and how she didn't realize until she was much older the significance of the period of history that she was living through was, and how dangerous that period of history was. She was just a young person trying to navigate growing up. The book opens with her finding out that Santa Claus isn't real, and how that felt like the biggest thing in the world, not the fact that there were bombs going off around her. There's a great sense of humor that runs through this book as well. She's got some really funny stories, some really touching stories, and I think that kind of sense of humor is something that a lot of Irish people use to deal with, you know, trauma. Like, if you can't laugh about it, what can you do? Another one of our prompts for this round of the Irish Readathon is to read a book of non-fiction, so this is a great way of you doubling up on those challenges if you haven't got around to them yet. The next book I want to talk about is The Firestarters by Jan Carson. This is another one that is set in Belfast, specifically East Belfast, and it's a story that is about two fathers, two very different fathers, their experiences of masculinity and trying to be a parent. One of them is an older man. He is a former paramilitary who is grappling with his past and the decisions that he made as a father many years ago. And then we also have quite a different character who is a new father, and he is going through a very unique set of circumstances. And without revealing too much, there are some fantasy elements to this book as well, which I think are fascinating. I did not expect those elements of the novel when I went into it, and it just took me by surprise completely, and I thought they were superbly done. This is a book that really looks at the legacy of the Troubles and the lasting impact of that violence. This was a book that I had relatively low expectations for, and it just completely surpassed anything I thought it was going to be. And the final book I'm going to talk about is Guard Your Heart by Sue Diven, which honestly is just one of my favourite young adult books of all time. I think this book is absolutely fantastic. This book is about the romance between Aidan and Iona. It is set in the summer of 2016 when both of our main characters are 18 years old. They were both born on the same day. It was the day that the Northern Irish Peace Agreement was signed. Aidan is Catholic, he is Irish, he is a Republican. Iona is Protestant, she identifies as British, and her father and her brother are in the police. One day, following a post-exam party, Aidan is walking home and he is the victim of a sectarian attack. Iona witnessed this attack and ended up filming it, and this experience draws these two teenagers together who otherwise wouldn't have had anything to do with one another. As a friendship and eventual romantic connection develops between these two characters, they feel like their backgrounds shouldn't make a difference. You know, the Troubles are effectively over, but really they're not. That conflict is still lingering and it still complicates the relationship between the two of them. They both have secrets from each other and are keeping their relationship secrets from those in their families. It's an experience that I had never seen depicted in a young adult novel before. I think it's an experience that can so easily be neglected or forgotten, and I am so glad that there is a book that is ensuring that teenagers are still aware of what it is like in Northern Ireland. So that is it. There are 5 book recommendations for you. If you've read any of these books before, do leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought of them. If you want to find out more about them, they will all be linked down below in the description, as will all of the information about the Irish Readathon. It is not too late to get involved. To participate in the readathon, all you need to do is read 1 Irish book, so there is plenty of time for you to squeeze a read in. I hope you guys are doing well, and I will speak to you in my next video.